In this video, we're covering the cinematography of The Vampire. Hi, I'm Chris with Wild 7 Studios. We just recently produced a short film called The Vampire, written and directed by our own Pedro Mendoza. It tells the tale of a lovesick vampire who's lost her taste for humans. I was lucky enough to be cinematographer on this wonderful project, and I'd like to share some of the things we learned and some of the things we did on this one. So, in today's video, we're going to break down some of the techniques and artistic choices we made while filming The Vampire. Our goal wasn't, and has never been, to recreate reality, but rather to build our own worlds and environments for our characters to play in. The Vampire was no different. We filmed over the course of 5 days throughout Southern California, with many additional days filming in the studio. We were filming custom miniatures that we built specifically for this film, and that took a long time. Through that process, though, we picked up some new techniques that we're going to share with you guys today. So first of all, we're going to look at some of our camera and lens choices. We shot on 2 different cameras for this movie. We shot on the Sony FX6 and the Sony FX3. The FX6 was my A cam for the majority of the shoot. When time was limited, I brought out the FX3 to get additional coverage. The way I would do this is frame up with the FX6 first, usually get a wider shot. Then I would frame up with the B cam, the FX3, and have that on a longer lens, usually something like 105, 135. This was a good way to get extra coverage, but something director April Mendoza and I discussed afterwards, and it's something we might not do again. You see, it's great having all that extra footage to cut away to, but it's not always necessary. In our most recent short film, Baggers, we shot with a single camera for the majority of the shoot, and we tried to film in as many one-ers as possible. For those of you who don't know, a one-er is a single uninterrupted shot. There's pluses and minuses to this, but I find that the pluses far outweigh the minuses. Firstly, not cutting away allows your actors' performances to really shine unedited. Some performances can be hindered or improved by the editing. One-ers remove this as they're uninterrupted takes. Also, they tremendously speed up time in both directions. Abel, while appreciative of all the footage we were able to gather, had to sort and deal with a lot more than she needed. We had a lot on the book. These are things you'll want to take into consideration when planning out your shots. Your editor might not be so happy when we dumped 2 or 3 terabytes of footage on for a short film. As for lenses, we had a lot of options, but we definitely knew we wanted to go vintage. The most versatile set I have out of all my vintage sets is my Super Talkmore set, our Pentas. This kit is really great. I have a 17mm fisheye on the wide end, all the way up to a 135mm on the telephoto end. We used the majority of the kit on this film, preferring long lenses when possible. We did, however, use some Sony G Master lenses on our gimbal shots. This was to take advantage of the really good autofocus while running. We didn't have a follow focus attached to our Roman, so we had to use autofocus. Next, the aesthetic. So whenever you're making a film, there's a handful of important aesthetic choices you need to make before you start filming. These have to do with color, texture, framing, depth of field, even the shape of your frame. This is far from the first film April and I have made together, so a lot of these choices were obvious for us. April likes colorful films with saturated palettes that still lean into dark. I don't want to call it the opposite of black and white because that's not exactly what we're going for. What we're aiming for is more like black and color. We always wish we could shoot on film, but that's not always an option. Cost really prohibits us, and we wanted to put our funds on the screen. I shot the film entirely at 800 ISO and 12,800 ISO, the 2 native ISOs for the FX6. I wanted to get the cleanest images possible for our colorist, Clifford Frigliano. Clifford was able to really bring out the best in these images and graded them with a film emulation. We went with a 1:6:6 aspect ratio at the suggestion of Clifford. We were originally considering 1:8:5, but we wanted a little bit of extra information on the tops and bottom of the frames. And for depth of field, April really let me decide. I like to keep my lenses between f2.8 and f4, but that rule isn't gospel for me. There were times I stopped down to 5.6 or even 5.8. I think the set design and the focus of the scene should really inform the cinematographer on how open and closed the lens should be, and not the cinematographer forcing the world to adjust to their lens. And this is our first scene breakdown, the lover's transformation. So, for the first scene, we're going to look at this flashback right here. Our title character, she's remembering that incident that actually transformed her into a vampire by her former lover. This set was built right here at Wild 7 Studios in downtown LA. April had the great idea of faking the bed canopy, by hanging different cloths and drapes. And then we put our actors in front of it. The bed was made using some sofas we have here in the studio, and we laid them down and put some bedding on top. I placed the Amaran F22C light mat behind the paper backdrop here and lit directly through it. I used a 4x4 silk to absorb to disperse a lot of the light. And to keep it from looking too sourcey, I wanted to kind of make it just look like a bright light coming from behind, not even necessarily a window. We were just going for it. Not everything has to be motivated. We could just do it just because it looks cool or looks good. For the character top light, we used an Amaran PT4C tube light. I'm a really big fan of these. They're RGB, they're soft, they're really versatile. They're one of my favorite lights to use. And if you watch any of the other backlot videos, you'll see them there behind me. I used an Amaran 300C as well with the Fresnel attachment on it to give Hannah, the vampire here, a hard edge light backlight. Our goal here was soft and warm lighting. I didn't light at all from camera side, other than the room ambience and this small bounce on the floor, giving it some red light from the 300C directing back at Hannah and Ryan here. So, our second breakdown, the bar scene. In this scene, our title character is hunting for a victim in this dark yet colorful bar. We filmed in Santa Monica at this really great location called Carvel's, and it's owned by a good friend of ours named Damian Anastasio. He's an amazing, talented actor who also appears in this film. Carvel's has a stage for performances as well as burlesque shows, so they have their own built-in lighting system. Damian was able to give me any color I wanted out of the lights, and all of them are on PTZ heads, so they're able to move around in multitudes of directions. This was fantastic for breaking up the backgrounds and really adding a lot of energy to the shots. They had a rotating disco ball as well that we took advantage of. The mirror-like design really shot and scattered the lights in every direction, and that was a lot of fun and really cool. Like before, we were using aperture and Amaran lights. That's what we have in studio, that's our go-to. For a key, we use the Amaran F22C for wider shots like this one right here. And then the PTC tubes for close-ups and shots that were mirror tables. They're a lot easier to get in places that lack the output, or they're a lot easier to get into places that are tight. But the downfall is that they lack the output of the F22C or like the 300C. This scene we shot with 2 cameras. We had a hard out at the bar. They're an operating bar, so we definitely had to get out before they opened. So we had to shoot at a pretty blistering pace. We made the day though. Well, we probably wouldn't do this again. We shot it with 2 cameras. So we got a lot of coverage, and the variety is always nice. Whenever you shoot a day like this, my biggest tip is if you know you have a hard out and you have to get out quick, think about in your last hour or so, breaking down anything you don't need and wrapping out anything you don't need in advance. And also plan. April and I had the whole day planned out top to bottom. And I'm not just talking about the shoot, I'm talking about setting up, parking, getting in, and literally tail lights out of there. We had it all planned down, and we were able to execute no problem. So, our third scene and the final one we're going to look at today is the Victorian house. This location is really cool, but it's funny, we kind of broke this up into 3 different locations. The main location is based in Riverside, California. You've probably seen it in several music videos and shows. It rents out almost exclusively for filming purposes. It's also not the cheapest location, so we were on a time crunch filming here as well. We cheated the upstairs room, this one right here, with another location we'd rented near downtown LA. This set also pops up in a lot of music videos and photo shoots. You might have seen it before. I know a lot of musicians and rock bands use this for album covers and photo shoots, so definitely not a 100% unique location, so we'll see another stuff. We wanted our night to have a blue tint to it. We knew we were going to be shooting some day for night scenes later in the film, and we wanted to try to blend these as best we could. We used the 300C and 150C, and I bounced them off polyboards to kind of spill the moonlight in a soft way onto the surfaces outside of the windows and outside of doors. We followed this lighting motif for the miniatures as well, trying to stay as consistent as possible. In the sitting room here, we used the lamp in the background and this candle background as well to try to motivate the lighting. As before, you can see the blue moonlight spilling in from outside. This was one of the trickier things to accomplish. We didn't have a tremendous amount of lamps, and none of them are all that powerful. So we had to constantly move our lights whenever we were outside to a near window. My final thoughts on this? So shooting the vampire was a really informative and fun process for me as a cinematographer. If I can go back and do anything differently, of course there's a lot of things I would change and adjust. That's just always how it is. There's always going to be shots I wish I used different lenses or framed something a little better or tighter. This is the nature of filmmaking, and all you can really do is make a plan and try to throw out as little of it as possible. The Vampire is up now on Wild 7 Studios YouTube channel. The link will be below at the end of this video as well. Do us a favor, go watch that video, like it, comment below. If you found today's video interesting and informative, actually seeing the vampire will amplify that. You'll really get a sense of why we made the decisions we made, why we chose the lighting we chose, all that good stuff. And if you have any questions or comments, drop them below. Love to hear from you, love to chat. I'm always here to answer questions, so feel free to ask. With Wild 7 Studios, I'm Chris Troll. We'll see you next time. The Vampire is out now on the Wild 7 Studios YouTube channel. Don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons.